Hello and good morning to everyone. Welcome to our second State of E-commerce exclusive roundtable for 2026. We're aiming to cover tactics, trends, and what really matters. And a lot of the topics have been generated out of our State of E-commerce report. We're welcoming 4 more guests to take even more topics and covering 3 pillars today around selling, engagement, and lifetime value. So I'm going to hand over to everyone in order to introduce themselves and tell me a little bit about the background and the audience. So maybe Kev, you could kick us off.
Thank you, Martin. Well, good to be here. Thanks for the invite. So my name is Kevin Paiser. I work for Reveni. We're a Spanish company in the SaaS operations end with a fintech side. So we do help brands around returns and cross-border. My background over the last 15 years has been working in e-com, SaaS tech for various companies like personalization, like Nosto, Shopify, and globally most recently. So very excited to be here and have this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you. James? Unmuted, please.
God, I knew that was going to happen. That's just classic, isn't it? What a start.
Of course you did.
That was so good as well. I won't be able to...
It's that live pressure. Like
That's it.
People are watching.
I won't be able to do it.
Where's the mute button?
As I was saying to myself earlier, my name's James. I'm the creative director at the Inbox Club. We're a email marketing agency for e-commerce brands, typically earning between 1 and 5 million in annual revenue. And great to be here as well. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, James. Mairaid, perhaps you next.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here today. So my name is Mairaid and I'm the Global Director of Partnerships at Loyalty Lion. I joined just over 2 months ago, so please go easy on me today. It's my first webinar with the company. But prior to being at Loyalty Lion, I headed up EMEA partnerships for a search and merch tool called Clayvu, now known as Athos Commerce. So just a little bit about Loyalty Lion for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We help Shopify brands become a differentiated customer experience by providing a loyalty platform engineered to retain and grow a brand's client base. Yeah, very excited for the conversation today.
Thank you. We'll try to go easy on you. We'll try.
Thanks.
And Burc, perhaps you can finish us off, please.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thanks for the invite. Also, my name is Burc, and I represent Prisync, which is a dynamic pricing software nowadays, mostly for Shopify merchants, I would say. So we help our clients to automatically track their competition, first of all, so they actually can benchmark where they stand in the market in terms of price competitiveness. And on top of that data, we help those merchants to automatically reprice their products. So I've been working on this, let's say, project company or whatever you call it for the significant majority of my life. So I simply graduated out of university, jump-started into entrepreneurship, failed another startup before doing this, and then just kicked off this business around 2013, more than 10 years ago. So it feels like I've been doing this for such a long time, but honestly, every year I feel like I'm restarting another startup. So nowadays is absolutely an exciting period. We'll talk about all the AI-ish details, but yeah, happy to be here today.
Thanks very much. AI is not a hot topic, is it? I don't think anyone's talking about that at the moment. Really sorry for mispronouncing your name. I'm sure we've met a couple of times, but I don't regularly use your name. So
I know that happens.
Butch, is that right? Butch.
Well, let's maybe call me whatever you like because it.
I won't do that. I'll call you whatever we call.
Burc, whatever. We have this strange. I first of all come from Istanbul, Turkey. So my name is a Turkish name. So it ends with a strange C that also exists in French, if you know, C with a dot at the bottom. But in Turkish we call it ch, CH. So it's Burc, if that works. Yeah.
Well, Istanbul is lovely. I went there in December. It's a lovely place. So I really enjoyed that. Right, let's kick things off. So we've got 3 chapters today. We've got chapter 1 being the consumer shift in 2026, chapter 2 being the retailer reality, and then chapter 3 being practical playbooks for 2026 and beyond. So practical advice that people can take away. We're going to get into the first section, which is the consumer shift in 2026, talking a little bit around retailer and community expectations. So what everyone's seeing in the market, personalization, intent-based journeys, the importance and function of personalization across the pillars, selling, engagement, and lifetime value, and loyalty drivers as well. So we've got a few questions there, and I've said to everyone beforehand, feel free to jump in. So if you think you want to take the question a bit further, that's absolutely fine. But I'm going to start off with Mairaid and say, looking ahead to 2026, what do you see as the biggest shifts in how customers define and value brand loyalty?
Thanks, Martin. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because, as I said, I've been at Loyalty Line now for the last 2 months. And I think very much when I started, and I think very much where the market has been, is seeing loyalty as very synonymous with discounting. But I really do think that loyalty is at a tipping point, and I think that the market is shifting. So in 2026, I see loyalty much more about experiences as well as discounts. So we did a really large consumer research report, and we found that 88% of consumers consider financial rewards an important loyalty benefit. So nothing has really changed there, and this is something that will likely always stay the same. But a significant number, 85%, now say the same about free shipping and also free product rewards. And around 70% want early access to new sales and early access to new products as well. So clearly shoppers don't just want discounts anymore. They want loyalty programs to offer experiences. They want to be able to connect with the brands, connect with the community. So whether that's simple things like rewarding like your high tier customers with like new product drops, or even more advanced initiatives like doing in-store events and inviting your top tier customers. So just one example of this that I absolutely loved when I heard about it during my onboarding was that one of our clients, Never Fully Dressed, they're like a female founded fashion brand. They essentially use their loyalty program to reward their like top tier customers. So they basically took them all to a concert. So they were in Never Fully Dressed branded taxis. They were decked out in Never Fully Dressed branded clothes. And it was all done to like thank them, make them feel special, make them feel part of the community. And I'm sure we'll see more and more brands thinking about how they can push the boundaries of how they're incentivizing their customers, creating personalized experiences moving forward to reward them.
It's interesting. You talk about the alignment historically, or in some people's minds, directly with discount, but actually experiences and brand alignment being really important ongoing, because you're then driving that relationship between the two parties, customer and brand, to basically get them closer and do experiences like that. So yeah, it's really interesting how people are pushing the boundaries on exactly what they'll offer and how they can make something that makes them stand out and why someone would align with them as a brand over anything else. Obviously there's an element of product in there, but alignment with the brand and how that's perceived in the market is quite important to people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I think it's often because when people think of like a loyalty program, they think of like their Tesco loyalty program, and what you get is like constantly money off. But most brands in the market within like the Shopify space aren't Tesco. So they really want to like build a brand, using your loyalty program to be able to do that and bringing the customers on the journey of what's important to them, I think is going to be really important in 2026 to differentiate, because there's so much competition out there.
Absolutely. Right. I've got a question for you next. It's quite confrontational, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. Why did you decide to focus your section less on how email marketers can use AI to send better emails and more on how recipients will be using AI to organize their inboxes?
Yeah, I love that you've positioned this as confrontational.
It's A or B. Tell me why.
Proper argument about this.
It's drop point. No. Okay. Talk to us.
I think obviously, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm sort of getting a little bit tired of the conversation around AI already, and I appreciate it's going to be a big focus of this webinar. But I think for me, I wanted to think about, okay, what's actually interesting for me when it comes to AI as an email marketer, and in a sense, I think that the technical ability that AI gives email marketers has somewhat leveled the playing field. It's easy for me now to build super sophisticated segments on Klaviyo, for example, or MailChimp using natural language. So, an email marketer that doesn't have years of experience could still build super cool, interesting, targeted segments. It's also easy to start using AI to build predictive segments as well. Your customers that are likely to buy but maybe haven't bought for a while. So all of these things mean that for the email marketing side of things, AI is making stuff easier and more democratic. So then the conversation turns to, okay, but how is it actually impacting the recipient? And we're already starting to see, and people watching this webinar will have experienced this themselves, depending on whether they have their settings AI enabled. You will start to see your inbox changing. And at the moment, that change is happening in the promotions folder. So we're seeing emails ordered in the promotion folder, not based on when the email was sent, which for the last, well, since email has existed, has been the way that our emails have been ordered. The most recent sender goes on top. Suddenly now we're seeing it based on relevance. So how likely is the recipient to engage with your email? If they're highly likely, Gmail is going to give that email some prioritization in the promotions folder. For me, it's only a matter of time before we start to see this profligate across other platforms and other folders as well. You know, it's only a matter of time before that email that we get from our manager that we have to respond to by the end of the day is going to be held at the top of our primary inboxes, regardless of whether we're getting other emails in the meantime. So I want to stress that AI usage in the inbox for most people is not going to be a conscious act. You know, people aren't necessarily aware that they're using these tools. And I think, like a lot of AI profligation, for the consumer side of things, it's going to happen by accident for a lot of them. They're going to have enabled some setting when they when they first built their email account. And that is going to mean that whether they like it or not, they're going to start seeing these changes. A recent study showed that 40% of emails are already getting either more or less visibility based on these new settings. So this is something that in 2025 was a theory. In 2026, it is very much a reality.
I genuinely wasn't even aware that change had occurred, and that's like super recent. So it's basically the taking the principles of how Google does its relevance for search and applying it to email as well. What's interesting, obviously, is that roughly the differentiation between the paid ads and the organic search results is the organic search results mainly around what we think is going to be most relevant to the person, so what they want to see, and obviously some level of AI is predicting what people want to see before they want to see it, and then the paid ads is what they want you to see. So in your example of the manager sending for a mail, there's effectively considered to be a PPC element, which is what they want you to perceive as a priority, and everything else is what you want to perceive as a priority. So basically turning off paid ads on the other side will basically remove you from seeing the things that other people think are important.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes sense, doesn't it? You know, whenever we look at any of Google's properties, what are they doing? They're trying to find ways of keeping you on their platforms for longer, right? And email is sort of the last bastion. It's the unexplored land for Google in terms of, you know, actually, when we look at the lifespan of email, not a huge amount has changed. You know, it hasn't gone through the same seismic shifts that search has gone through, for example. And so it's about time that it became more sophisticated. And it makes sense because ultimately Google want people in their inboxes to think, this is a place that I want to come back to day after day. Of course, we're also seeing ads in the inbox as well. So, you know, there's at the bottom of all of this is financial incentives for Google, of course. It's about time, and brands need to adapt.
Fair enough. Okay, well, next question is coming back to you, James, again, which is around the fact you introduced the concept of email brand in the report. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sorry, everyone. I don't talk for the entire webinar, I promise.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'll soon shut you up. Time out.
Yeah, please do. Bit of a contentious figure, Jeff Bezos. Let's not get into how we feel about him, but he has a great quote about brand, which is, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So this idea of email brand, which is something that we discussed in the paper, is this idea that, okay, if we forget about your brand, your entire company brand, and instead just focus this concept of brand, but only in terms of your reputation as a sender, what does that look like? Because there are incredible brands out there that do, that take their customers to gigs in branded taxis and that sort of thing. But perhaps they don't show up in that way in the inbox. And that's one disparity that we're noticing, is that you have these brands that genuinely care about their customers, but then the way that they're sending emails doesn't reflect that at all. And actually they're quite inconsiderate of the customer experience. And so in the email brand is loads of different elements. Personalization is a big one. But I suppose the takeaway for this is, whilst the technical side of personalization, again, is being democratized because of awesome AI tools that enable us to really get personal with our email audience and understand who they are and what their priorities are. Ultimately, if we're doing those things, but we're not showing up in the inbox with really good, highly thought out content that actually speaks to our audience, if it's generic, boring stuff, it doesn't matter how good our technical personalization is, it's not going to feel personal for the audience. So I think at the bottom of everything, email brand means speaking to your audience in a way that you would if you were sat in the pub with them. If you were sat with them, if they walked into a physical store, how would you interact with them? And that needs to come across in email as well. And it's easier said than done, but I think super important in this age where Google and other email providers are going to start prioritizing emails based on how likely you are to engage.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, right. So on to you, Burc. I've got a question for you around Prisync, which is the fact that you solved the problem of data access when you founded it. Looking ahead, has the challenge shifted from getting the data to knowing what to do with it?
Well, I would say like in the last 10 or so years, it definitely did change. And I think we could really sum it up by looking into this, I think it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's more of a change in companies' maturity in the last 10 years, really reflecting those hierarchies. I'm saying like 10 years ago, basically, when we got started, people just came to us and said, okay, this is my product list, and I want to scrape pricing data from competitor A and B. Can you do that? We said yes. So we basically, first of all, existed as a, let's say, tool. So we helped those people to do a repetitive task in an automated way that worked well. People paid us monthly fees and so on. But after a few years, people sort of started to feel that, well, they no longer just need competitor A and B, but there started to appear different competitors they don't even know. So they just came to us and say, well, this is my product list. Please find whoever else sells the same item and just bring me competitive pricing intelligence. We, first of all, didn't really kind of tackle what those merchants are doing afterwards. So they just got the data from us and they just did whatever they did with their pricing know-how. But again, year by year, we also started to figure out that they were doing something on Excel files. So when we compiled all the competition data, we were dumping Excel files to those merchants, and they were doing basically formulas, basic calculations on top of this competition. And then they were adjusting their prices on their web shop, like Shopify, XYZ, whatever. Then we started to dig that problem. And then we figured out that people were just simply coming up with rules themselves. So they were saying, okay, try to set my pricing 5% cheaper than competitor A and B, as long as I have, 10 pounds, 10% profit margin. We said, well, that's also something that we could automate. So we built a rule-based dynamic pricing engine on top of this competitive pricing intel. And nowadays, we are now digging the problem of like this rule setting aspect. So we see that like people are just setting rules, but AI, sorry to kind of state that, AI is basically getting, and actually it already got better than people in setting those rules. So if you really define your objective, like commercial objective as a merchant, AI can simply come up with a better repricing rule on top of all the data that we already crunch. So we are moving actually more towards that part. So people are just coming to us saying that this is my product list, basically set my pricing. So no other prompts, let's put it that way. So they just come to us with their product assortment on Shopify. We automatically identify all the competition, scrape all the pricing, set up all the rules, automatically change pricing on the fly. So we basically evolved more into it might sound like a scam, but basically a profit automation guaranteed in a way. So you just come, we just guarantee you profit via pricing. And I believe the future, if I may also jump into that part, is also kind of going in a direction where we might even decide on what to sell on behalf of merchants. So they will just basically come to us with their retrospective, let's say, past. They will say, okay, I was a perfumery retailer on Shopify. Like I've been doing this since 2017. This is my product assortment. Decide on what I should do in the future, such as like we could also maybe decide on adding new product lines into their assortment, selling them at dynamically set pricing and so on, to further emphasize this profit automation aspect. So I believe really in line with the natural progress of technology, I would say not AI, we became more of a, let's say, an agentic system rather than just a tool. And I think that's the natural progress that every single like SaaS provider needs to actually like maintain if they really want to be relevant. And like I said in the introduction, like I've been doing this thing for 10 plus years, but I seriously meant what I said. So I feel like we are restarting the business every single year. So this is the starting point for us as of today. And I believe and I see that it's relevant for the market.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there. And part of what you were talking about was around defining objectives, but specifically commercial objectives, which makes the system or the agentic part or whatever, or how it's being used for the overall objective be different. You know, the price can be far lower if the margin required is very small, like depending on what the product is or how that's working. But yeah, really interesting if you're defining your business goals, aligning it with what how exactly you're using the pricing information, and then feeding that into exactly how you sell products or whatever the sale is.
Exactly.
Okay, Kevin, coming to you last but certainly not least, around expectations, which I'm sure is a very easy topic for everyone to deal with, specifically customer expectations around speed being higher than ever. So particularly with moments of friction like returns, how would you say instant gratification such as instant refunds or exchanges impact trust and loyalty? And why is this becoming a key differentiator in the customer experience in 2026? I think you might be muted, maybe. Yeah, I think we're struggling to hear you.
It's weird because it doesn't say he's muted.
Oh, good. Okay, carry on. Oh, could that be it? Oh, muted. I just muted there.
You can hear me?
Oh, we can. Yes. Wonderful. Sorry, I don't know what happened there, but we've got you now.
Okay. Well, look, I think I was just saying that the question is obviously very, very big in terms of the challenges that we're seeing today, and I think the guys have already discussed in this other questions that there's similarities on what we're trying to achieve. But the first thing I wanted to say is that all brands are trying to minimize friction, be it through the customer journey, so be it improving customer experience, be it kind of increase the brand experience. All of that leads into loyalty, and I think that's kind of something that I think all brands are trying to do. On the pre-purchase side of things, I think the post-purchase, there's been a new wave of kind of what we are hearing is kind of what the customers expect, a seamless and faster experience than what's done today. This whole 14-day refund experience of either an exchange or a money back takes forever. And I think it's because of the wave of technology that we've been seeing over the last few years. You know, you get the information really quickly. Obviously, all the agentic platforms give you information fast. There's buy now, pay later, so to buy things before you even have the money. All of these aspects of society are creating this expectation for the post-purchase experience. And Reveni kind of came about similarly to help those brands achieve that kind of level of instant gratification. And there are companies out there already, you know, big companies, Patagonia, Zappos, you know, you're talking about companies that have been doing this for years, already giving a really good returns experience. Because if you do that, in essence, you're actually giving the customer a really high brand experience that increases their loyalty. Through the instant exchanges and instant refunds, what we've been trying to do with the fintech side is to really help brands give the customers the trust that they can get the money back quicker or have an exchange done immediately without them having even to send the product. And I think that's really a massive customer advantage for you as a brand to kind of be able to tell your customers that you can give them that comfort that this is not going to take forever. And I think with loyalty platforms like Loyalty Line, we know that there is a good asset of this solution to kind of add benefits to those programs that brands are building today. So, you know, the likes of Victoria Beckham, M&M, these are brands that have seen this as a way to just give the confidence to the consumer to kind of carry on kind of purchasing with confidence and knowing that that post-purchase experience is not going to be horrible and not going to be full of friction for you to think about.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I'm going to move on to the second chapter, unless anyone's got anything they want to add to that, but no pressure if not, it's absolutely fine. The second chapter is around the retailer reality. So what decision makers are prioritizing. For example, 53% are prioritizing loyalty and the pain points and bottlenecks. So back to you, Burc, for the first question, which is in an era where ad costs, CAC, are skyrocketing, why do you believe pricing remains the most underestimated growth lever in e-commerce brands in 2026?
Well, I mean, I come from a culture where like waste is regarded as a big sin, I would say. And I mean that in the sense of like wasting marketing budgets. And I think this is also a major guilt that we observe in the retail space a lot. And I think pricing can be like, if the merchant can really see that opportunity, it can be really well tied to marketing in that sense. What I mean is, for example, one major marketing tactic that our merchants apply on top of our software is automating their Google Shopping, like specifically CPC campaigns on Google Shopping via our price competitiveness signals. So let me kind of clear that up maybe for you. So let's imagine a Shopify merchant. Again, let's always imagine Shopify merchants, please. So let's say we have a merchant using our tool with 5,000 products. Again, let's kind of consider a consumer electronics retailer. So they have all their cost of goods sold in Shopify, so they cannot really do much about them. So they just buy products from suppliers, they negotiate, they get the best rate possible. Anyway, those are all static, all set. And after that, they have the market reality. So for those 5,000 products, eventually they will be in a heavy price competition because they are doing consumer electronics, they rely on Google Shopping. So they obviously cannot do much about their cost pressures. So they cannot really be the cheapest and profitable all the time, right? So for some brands, for some products, their buying power, their purchasing power, so their negotiation power in terms of cost will let them be, let's say, 10% profitable, and also the maybe most, I don't know, like best deal in the market. But for some products, that won't be the case. So what we see is that like when merchants apply a blanket campaign, let's say for all their 5,000 SKUs, they set a certain CPC, they market all their products in the same way on Google Shopping. What happens is that, let's say for 1,000 products, again, they manage to be the cheapest and profitable. And for 4,000 of them, they couldn't become the cheapest, but they are still doing profits. So if they really double down on the items where they are both profitable and competitive, and kind of divest from those products where they are not really competitive, their marketing ROAS, like return on spending, really skyrockets. So even without changing your pricing much, if you only look into your competitive intelligence, like into your competitive space, and if you really decide on which products really require, let's say, further boosting on Google Shopping, you can save a ton of time. Because essentially, if you market products that are not really very competitive in terms of products, you'll be getting clicks that won't convert. Because like all of us essentially kind of open tons of tabs of the same item if we are buying a branded product. And mostly, again, I'm just saying mostly, but if I speak in a biased way, all the time, we buy the one that kind of has the best pricing option. So all those other tabs that we opened still kind of are charged via Google, but not converted. But if you really have a profitable item marketed as the kind of a best deal, those products convert. So we better kind of help our merchants allocate their marketing budget in line with their price competitiveness. And thanks to that, we avoid a ton of waste, which makes me happy, as a human being, to be honest. So I would definitely recommend tying pricing competitiveness into CPC campaigns on Google.
Interesting. Yeah, really useful insight there. Thank you. Back to you, Kevin, talking about returns again, which is the fact that they're traditionally treated as a cost, especially during peak seasons when volumes increase. What mindset shifts have you seen in high-performing brands that use returns and exchanges strategically to retain customers and drive long-term loyalty?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think
it's definitely true that returns are expensive and usually are costing brands tons of money. And there are what they called in retailers called healthy returners, and obviously the naughty returners. And these are things that sometimes we can't stop, because I think the behaviors of certain customers is what it is. But I think if you do the returns well, you can actually maximize that part of the sales process, or essentially the post-purchase process, to actually be a revenue driver. And I think we've seen this with brands that are very much telling their customers early on in that kind of buying process that you can actually exchange instantly, to kind of give you confidence of, look, you don't need to buy 3 items of different sizes of the same item. So you kind of wanted to reduce that ability for them to just keep buying 3 sizes of the same item in order to just exchange 2 or return 2. So giving that kind of prior warning through the process and giving that confidence that you have this ability to do that, it's a lot better. And we've seen already about 46% of people that do returns or exchanges properly will get repeat purchase. So that means the customers are actually having a good experience and are able to do this seamlessly, would actually end up buying again and having that kind of increased brand experience, which is what we believe returns needs to be. Returns can't be something that you hide in your returns policy and hoping people never see it, or when they need it, they go, oh, I need to now send them an email and actually get another response back. It's just painful if you have that process. So if you actually make it visible and make it part of your experience early on, just like you can say about how long it takes to deliver something or what payment methods you offer, the earlier you do that, I think the better the experience after they bought, and if they have an issue, they will actually feel. So we've seen brands become actually more open, actually sharing this. And there's obviously the leaders like Amazon, they give you even instant refunds now, and sometimes tell you, look, that product's probably not worth us taking back, so donate it to someone that needs it. Obviously, those are like the brands that can afford to do that. But when it comes fashion, you want that product back, you want it, but you also want that customer to have a good experience, to buy back and still think of you as a brand that they want to trust. So I think that's the shifts we're seeing. And we definitely think that this wave of being more transparent with your returns is something that's going to happen, and trusting your customers to give them the money back if they want immediately, or allowing them to do an exchange even before they've even posted the package. I think that's something we should be able to do. So as a company, we believe that's the future for this part of the business that companies are inevitably going to have. Though returns, I don't think we can disappear, can reduce them completely. If anything, they're just going up because there's more purchases happening. But it's a case of how do we make that experience better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think, like personally, when I'm shopping, that it's a big factor to me necessarily about returns, but I've certainly noticed the shift in how present talking about what the returns policy is, what the window is. Like I've certainly noticed that increasing over time, and obviously that's a factor in exactly, especially with fashion, what people are ordering, whether it fits or not, ordering multiple sizes, returning what they don't want. There's certainly a culture around that being very prevalent to make sure that people know when they're doing it, they can try and send whatever what doesn't work for them back. So I think that's been really strong.
Yeah, and one clear example, when I speak to a lot of customers, at the end of the day, they say, look, I've sometimes think twice about buying a certain brand I've never bought before, and I go to Amazon because I know that the return process is going to be simple if I have those wrong. So yes, Amazon's not nailed the fashion segment, and that's great, because obviously there's some great brands doing D2C and fashion brands that should exist outside of that world. But I think just knowing that as a customer expectation, you as a brand should try and offer that as well if you can. And that's why one-click checkouts happen now, that everyone can nearly offer that thanks to Shopify and other platforms. Next day delivery, nearly most brands can try to do this as well. So there's a lot of these quick wins that brands have managed to do. And I think the returns is something that maybe hasn't really been there for them. And so I think we're hopefully closing that gap.
The whole having a subscriber based or a subscription method that is including free shipping and returns and how that's done has certainly been something that, like, obviously Prime have it, but it's been something I've seen before in fashion. So it's not something I take close eye on, but yeah, that type of setup has certainly been interesting to watch.
Agreed.
Excellent. Okay, right. Back to you, Burc. I've got a couple of questions in order, actually. So I'll do them one at a time. But the first one is around how has pricing decision making changed in the last few years with increasing competition and marketplace dominance? I'll read you the second one anyway, so you can either choose to feed in. But the second one is around many sellers still adjust prices based on intuition and occasional checks. what are the risks of not actively tracking your competitor prices? I feel like we have touched around this a little bit in terms of frameworks that can be used, but
I'll keep it short. And I honestly, I really want to believe that retailers no longer really price on intuition. So I will kind of consider this question as maybe an non-existent question. But I mean, if they still do, I from my recent memory, I attended a major football match last evening in Istanbul. I support Gala. My team had a Champions League game anyway. So I will just give an example from a football match. So if a retailer is still pricing on intuition, ignoring competition and everything going on, I think it really feels like setting up a team with major players, great mentality, great physicality, with eyes banded for 90 minutes. I'm doing this for the whole season. So it's a guaranteed relegation, again, from football perspective. So I believe it's an immediate failure aspect. And when it comes to the first question, so how it all changed. So like you maybe touched upon, competition is obviously broadened up, because merchants are no longer just simply competing against other merchants like their peers, but they're competing against giants, giant marketplaces. They are competing against, I don't know, Facebook shop, Instagram shop, TikTok shop. So shops are everywhere. So essentially they now need to really drop a wider net in order to have a really close look into their competitive landscape. And like I said, they no longer really think that they know better than technology. I'm afraid this might sound I don't know. This might kind of freak people out, but I think pricing is nowadays being done better on a broader level. I'm just kind of benchmarking an average computer, average AI versus average, let's say, pricing manager. I think AI is relatively better nowadays in that sense. So people should really kind of go in peace with that idea and really come to us or come to any technology that kind of automates pricing with that mentality. So they just need to dump us the basics. So what they sell, what's their costs, and then the systems really need to figure out the rest. So they shouldn't really think that they know it best. They shouldn't just ask for data and then do whatever they do, but they really need to kind of think about automating whatever they can, because now the automation can really deliver significant results. It's no longer automating and just experimenting and seeing what will happen, but it's really kind of automating profit, like I said earlier. So I think this mentality change is a must. And I really don't believe that mentality you asked doesn't exist anymore. So no one really kind of plays football with eyes banded, I believe. That's what I really want to believe. And thanks, James. I agree for the unbelievable result. Yeah.
Juventus might have been playing last night with blindfolded by the result.
I agree. But I watched the game. They weren't, honestly. So we were playing our players had 4 eyes, I guess.
Right, okay. On to the next question. Back to you, Mairaid, talking about loyalty again. What mistakes do you think brands make when trying to build loyalty, and how can they move beyond points and discounts to something more meaningful? Now, I appreciate we did touch a little bit on this earlier, so might be recovering, but there's perhaps some useful stuff in there about how people are doing things incorrectly that you can certainly help them out with.
Yeah, so I think I might break it down into 2 parts. So first, what I think brands are doing kind of wrong when it comes to loyalty. And I think the first mistake is thinking that loyalty is fluffy and it can't be measured in the same way that acquisition channels can be. So it's the same as any other marketing activity. Brands should always be questioning the revenue and the ROI that the loyalty program is driving, because otherwise it's impossible to know how much you can reinvest back into the program and what you need to do to optimize. So this is something that I'd say we're particularly proud of at Loyalty Lion. So we give you full visibility into attributed revenue from loyalty from every element of your program. So whether that be repeat purchases from redeeming members, referrals, email and SMS, and then other loyalty components throughout the website. And then, hate to use the word AI again, but our AI-powered insights as well go deeper. So we help brands who use Loyalty Lion explain the impact of the program without needing to interpret all of the charts and all of the data. So it does drive efficiency, so it is useful. So this means that essentially you can have the hard conversations with your finance team that prove the growth that loyalty programs drive, but also decide how much you should invest back into the program, into like the experiential rewards that I was talking about Never Fully Dressed providing, and that you're then still confident that you can deliver the ROI. So I'd say that Pulse Boutique is a really great example of this. Their loyalty program, they've been with Loyalty Line for a number of years, they're a great customer of ours. It now delivers 44% of the total revenue. So this just makes conversations with their CFO a lot easier. So that's what I think brands are kind of getting wrong when they're thinking about loyalty. But I think the second part about how to move beyond and make it part of the broader strategy is integrating it with your product strategy as well. I just thought that this was a really nice example of how you can bring kind of more shoppers on the journey when you're launching new products or releasing kind of new drops as well. So some ways to do this include early access to new products as they launch. You could run double points campaigns on products that you've overstocked on, or you could tie your loyalty tiers into new product drops as well. So there's so many ways that you can work together through product and retention to reduce also your reliance on discounts as well, and also gather interesting customer insights as well that can feed back into product development. So a really cool example of this is AU Vodka. So they often launch like new samples. I'm a big fan of vodka myself, and I do very much like AU Vodka. And essentially what they do is for their top tier customers and different tiers throughout, they essentially give them access to like new flavors that they've launched. They gather kind of feedback. And what this drives is like exclusivity. It creates a sense of community, but it also helps on the acquisition standpoint as well, getting more people in the program, because their Instagram like DMs are flooded with like, how do I get access to this? Because whenever they're doing these drops, it's always like password protective. So you have to be part of the gang in order to get access. So it can help also drive new program membership as well.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Yeah, a proper deconstruction and building back up of exactly how to work it and work it best. Thank you. Back to Kevin here. Sorry, James. I appreciate I've not leaned in too much in this section, but there's plenty more to come from you, so don't worry about that.
I've had enough time already, to be fair.
Okay, sorry. Well, over to you, Kevin. This is quite a tongue twister, but as brands look to scale through peak seasons and international expansion, operational complexity increases significantly. What challenges does cross-border commerce introduce around returns, costs, and delivery times, and how should brands prepare their operations to remain agile, protect margin, and still deliver consistent customer experience?
Love it. A good question as well. So, I mean, I think any brand wants to go international now, right? I mean, I think it's kind of part of that you go live, you go international. However, I think it's very clear that selling cross-border is more expensive for multiple reasons. And not only cross-border shouldn't even be looked at as just, there's just more countries. Actually, every country has very different nuances as well that you need to be aware of. And so each country may be actually more costly than others. So what we're talking about is tax and duties. Who hasn't talked about tax and duties last year? We're talking about, shipping rates, payment rates. All of these things add up to your margin when you're selling internationally. What we're seeing and what we want to make sure is that customers and brands particularly kind of are able to serve those customers internationally with the same localization ability that they do today. But more importantly, I think the brands that are kind of facing challenges are those that when you have high return volumes and you have to deal with those as well internationally, how do you avoid having those cases? So there are some simple solutions that we believe through the use of some AI, data and pricing, you can actually support that kind of strategy. So for example, one of the first things that a lot of brands are trying to do is around sizing guidance on product pages. There is about a few tools that can do this as a good job, because obviously customers in different countries may actually fit products differently. And therefore, you might want to advise them based on data that you've received around return, what typical size you should be if you're typically, let's say, a medium on this product. So, for example, that kind of guidance is really, really valuable. The other one is pricing strategy. I think every market can also be actually put in a way that you can actually build a strategy of pricing for a product in different markets. And I think, Burc talks about this, and it's more than important that if you sell into the US, you may have to up your prices by 15, 20%. The consumers are probably willing to pay that. Whereas if you go to Japan, where there's maybe challenges with the currency today, maybe you want to lower those prices. But this is kind of, a 200 plus market economy where you probably want to look at that and see how you can do this, in a scalable way. And the last thing is around, and I think I talked about that, bracketing. Bracketing is that concept where you want to stop people buying 2 or 3 sizes of the same product. And it's doing this in that journey to kind of make them aware of what that means to them as a brand, and also for them, they might not need to do that as a consumer. So all of those things, I think, are something that brands can work towards helping those expensive costs of going cross-border and during peak season as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks, Kevin. We actually have a series of events that we're running at the moment under our Engage with E-commerce brand, which is around internationalization. So we ran one last week, and it was mainly around brands looking to expand into Europe and particularly into the Benelux region. And we partnered with an agency based in Antwerp called Radical. And some of the points that he was raising was around mentalities between different consumers in different countries. So a difference between the Belgian mindset and the Dutch mindset around the expectation around how quickly the order's delivered and what the returns are, etc. So yeah, really interesting. And the key message taken away from all of the talks was around preparation. There was a retailer that spoke and said they'd had an issue with when the Brexit change finally came in, they immediately had a problem with getting returns back across border. So yeah, what you're talking about there, a good amount of preparation, making sure that brands understand what it means when they expand into other regions and they can get it right, whether it be around how they're practically doing it operationally or how they are delivering their message to the end customer to get it right and get the product successful in the regions they're looking to expand into.
Exactly. And there is a lot of great brands doing it well, and I think you can also learn from those. And we always encourage that there is experts out there that can help you. We've launched our product Atlas, which is around helping brands navigate the tax and duties challenges mostly. And I think that's something that we're seeing a high interest on.
Brilliant. Okay, well, moving into the last section, which is chapter 3, which around practical playbooks for 2026 and beyond. So this is about getting it right, what people can take away. So there's quite a few topics in here. So I'm going to come to you first, Burc, and ask about manual pricing. Is manual pricing even a viable option for a growing brand today, or has automation become a necessity, or AI, in fact?
Well, I think I responded it in the previous questions. So like the short answer would be no. But honestly, like we still see some kind of like ancient examples of like manual pricing across the board. But I think it's getting rarer and rarer. So like, again, the short answer is no. So like, obviously, like people should really, first of all, get familiar with whatever automation opportunities exist in the market, like ourselves, like all other competition we have, and, all the other techniques, because it exists and it's actually, it's abundant, I would say. Nowadays, I'm feeling it myself as well. We have a lot of competition, but we try to do our best and so on. But like people should really kind of get familiar with automated pricing ideas. And if I may, like if that was also part of the question, a basic tip that I always try to give in these webinars in the last 10 years or so, to be honest, so not this 2026, is kind of really setting up the basics right when it comes to like product data. Because like we occasionally encounter merchants who are very enthusiastic about doing their best with pricing automation. They want to do everything with pricing, whatever exists out there. But they, for example, don't have their cost data in Shopify. They don't really have their brand information correctly set up in their, CMS. They don't, for example, tag products right and so on. So those product data structure is vital before really diving deep into product pricing automation. Because unless really you have your house clean, honestly, or maybe unless you have your kind of base strong enough, you cannot really build up. And that's really what we come across a lot. So for merchants who are really trying to get ready for this AI and so on, I think they should still really focus on the retail basics. And I think for me, in retail, product matters a lot. And in digital commerce, in e-commerce, product data in those commerce platforms matter a lot. I think that's this might not be a direct pricing tip, but it's kind of a data tip. And I think people mostly ignore that. They just expect a ton without really doing the basics right. So I think really figuring out the basics right matters a lot. Today, like I said, like last year, 5 years ago, I think I attended the webinar, said the same thing. If you invite me next year, I can just echo myself, I believe.
Just same thing on repeat each time. There's actually a follow-up that I was going to ask a little bit later, but you started to push into it. I think it's probably right to conclude it here, which is around many sellers fearing that dynamic pricing is a race to the bottom. And it talks about how brands can use pricing intelligence to increase margins and protect brand equity. But that's part of what you were talking about, getting the data right, which is if you understand what the product is, the cost, price, etc., you can start to use those things as the correct measurements to get the dynamic pricing right. And I sort of answered the question a little bit for you, but I feel that's where you were going with it.
One very simple sentence, maybe one simple statistics from our database to kind of mitigate that fear. So like I said, automatically change prices on behalf of our merchants. And about 60 to 65% of those automated price changes are price increases. So it's not really causing any race to the bottom, because people mostly kind of, without enough intel on competition, they sort of kind of overemphasize the importance of competition. So they underprice themselves heavily because they think like, if I don't really underprice myself, I will be overpriced. But if they see the competition, the reality might not be that dark. So we help merchants increase their prices while still maintaining their competitiveness. So this happens a lot. And I think this is the strongest selling point of us, to be honest. So like I said, the majority of our automated price changes are price increases. So thanks to that, we don't really create a race to the bottom. We sort of try to create a race to up, let's say. That's the intention.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that would probably be an unexpected thing that people consider around this, because they would assume that you're constantly monitoring and going lower, 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 rather than actually saying, okay, where is the market setting the price, and let's work to that, but slightly under it to retain that margin. But knowing exactly what your product is, what your cost base is for it in the first place, means you know exactly how far you can go to make a good margin and be successful with it. So really interesting. James, back to you, finally. What can brands do to ensure that email still gets visibility and engagement in an AI-powered inbox?
Yeah, so Google have done something that Google never usually do, which is they have given us a small glimpse into what defines their way of prioritizing emails, and it is engagement. That's all we've been given. We don't know what weighting different engagement actions have been given, but we know that engagement is the main thing they're going to be using to give brands in the promotions folder more or less visibility. Okay, so that will be things like opens, it will be things like clicks, replies. I would imagine replies and clicks have a bigger weighting than opens. It might also involve things like the amount of time that someone dwells on an email. All of which is to say we need to start sending good emails. There are a couple of actionable pieces of advice that I want to give here, because I think when people think about how they're going to get more people into their emails, their immediate thought might be to turn to the subject line and to think, well, if I can just send a really good subject line, that's going to increase my open rates. The reality is it's not going to in a really meaningful way. Unless you're going to start using dirty tactics, which might work in the short term, but ultimately will damage your sender brand. Sending good subject lines and thinking more about that is definitely advisable, but we're talking small percentage shifts here. If you want your open rates to go from 20% to 50% overnight, the cheat code is just to send to those recipients who regularly open your emails, right? And as soon as you do that, you're going to be sending to people who are more likely to open your emails in the first place, which means your open rates are going to go up, your click rates are going to go up. And doing this now and again is a great signal to the Gmails of the world that says, we're sending to people that want to hear from us. The proof is in the pudding because they're opening our emails, they're clicking, they might be replying. Please give us more priority when we do send to the whole of our list. So this is it's turning a ship, but it's very, very difficult to re-engage subscribers who are already ignoring your emails, no matter what you do. Which brings me on to the second piece of actionable advice, which is think really carefully about your welcome email. Okay, your welcome email is like a first date. You don't show up to a first date with your most boring version of yourself. You show up to a first date bringing everything that you've got, all right? We want to be spontaneous. We want to be interesting. We want to distinguish ourselves amongst all of the noise. Think about the amount of dates that your recipient is going on. We want to find ways of distinguishing ourselves. So think very carefully about your welcome email, because that ultimately is going to determine whether that subscriber decides to shack up with your brand or not, right? We want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. So don't just give a discount code and say off you go. That's like turning up to a date with flowers and then just clearing off after you've handed them over. We want to have a bit of a conversation, inject some personality in there, and that's going to ensure that subscriber continues to open emails from us in the future.
Lovely. Good actionable advice. Thank you, James. Back to you, Mairaid. I think you might have done this, so maybe the question I'm answering for no reason, but can you share an example from one of your clients where loyalty strategy in the past year has delivered standout results and what made it work? I know you spoke a little bit about clients, so I don't know whether that was going to be the key example you mentioned here.
No, I can definitely use another example. That's all okay. So one brand that I love that Loyalty Line works with is the Inky List. So they really use their loyalty program and understand that it should sit across the whole strategy of the business, including marketing. So one of their key annual activations is the Inky Insiders Week. So imagine Amazon Prime Week, but better, in my opinion. So the event essentially runs once a year, and it involves 7 days of exclusive offers, prizes and perks. So it does feature discounts, but it also features early access to new products, free products with specific orders, the chance to win back the cost of your whole order. So it's just different ways to surprise and delight customers throughout this week, and customers that are part of the loyalty program, of course. So essentially this increases orders for the brand, and their members essentially drive 10.6 times more than non-members in this week alone. So the numbers are huge, and it also helps on the acquisition side of things as well, because typically they see an increase of around 371% in signups for their loyalty program as well. And then overall across the whole year for the Inky List, their loyalty program drives 25% of their total revenue. So yeah, some really incredible numbers from that brand. And yeah, if you don't know them, definitely go and check them out. They're in the kind of hair and skincare space.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, we're running a little bit short on time, so the question is going to get a bit faster. Back to you, Kevin. When brands prepare for peak selling moments, the focus often is acquisition and conversion. How does post-purchase experience, especially shipping, returns, and exchanges, play a role in maximizing customer lifetime value beyond the first purchase?
Yeah, well, look, I'll try and be sharp and quick on this one. And I think ultimately we've talked about it, but I think turning the kind of nasty world of returns into your advantage and bringing it forward actually helps with conversion and acquisition, because actually you're making that experience be clear from the start. So for brands, it's really about streamlining the returns and automating that kind of financial flow, which actually eases their pain internally from kind of having to handle that, usually a post-purchase experience if someone is looking for their order or the returns. And that kind of enhances the customer experience. We've seen that we can actually help brands by upselling through an exchange program that you do rightly on your returns process. So I think all of those things will actually ultimately help. And there's been a recent research from Gartner which said that right now reverse logistics and the returns optimization strategy for brands is actually critical for the kind of winning strategy for going with better customer loyalty. So I think this is exactly what we're helping brands do, and I'm encouraging a lot of the brands and even the partners here to actually look at that as a way to maximize their kind of current either loyalty programs or even their email communications and the pricing strategy. So all of that stuff I think goes well in hand with the return experience.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Very last questions. James, come back to you. If AI can generate 1,000 emails in a second, the noise in the inbox is going to be deafening. What is the one thing a human marketeer can do that an AI-generated email simply can't?
AI doesn't know what you had for breakfast this morning, why you started your brand in the first place, what you thought to the latest Traitors episode, whether you've been ill last week. You need to surface these things in your emails. That's how you get genuine engagement, because those are almost like human triggers. We have AI triggers. We know that those long dashes might mean AI. We also have human triggers. As soon as you start talking about the lived human experience, you are far more likely to get email engagement. I think not enough brands do that. Don't be afraid to reveal a little bit of yourself. And I think it'll be a long, long time before AI is doing that.
Fair enough. Right. Absolute last question. Back to you, Burc, which is if a seller wants to start improving their pricing today, what's the first step you'd recommend?
I will keep it short. Like I said, I think before really jumping into pricing automation, they should figure out their price product data properly. So they should really have all their data in place. They should keep it clean. They should keep it up to date. So whenever they add new products, they should really maintain the same data quality standard across the board for every single SKU. And then obviously, like unless they're already doing that, they should watch out competition. And they should trust automation more and more, because we see the results. We have been serving hundreds of merchants and it really works. So it's no longer really an experiment. So they should really learn being friends with technology, with AI or whatever new technology comes up, because it really works. It really delivers. So really kind of open up your mind, focus on your basics, do the retail right, and rely on technology for the rest.
Brilliant. What a good way to end. So I'm just going to conclude and say thanks everyone for watching. Thank you to my 4 guests. It's been very good having a intense discussion over the past hour. Just representing Loyalty Lion, Prisync, Reveni, and the Inbox Club. So really appreciate the time today, guys, and I've certainly enjoyed it. So thank you to you, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Can we leave now, Martin?